A man has just entered the most closed circle of Iranian power. His name? Ayatollah Alireza Arafi. And if you've never heard of him, that's exactly what the regime intended. Discreet, methodical, ideologically ironclad, Arafi is not a face you see in Western media. But since March 1st, 2026, he sits on the Interim Leadership Council of the Islamic Republic of Iran, the same council tasked with deciding who will govern one of the most dangerous regimes on the planet following the death of Ali Khamenei, eliminated by an Israeli strike on his residential compound in Tehran. This is not an ordinary transfer of power. This is not an election, not a peaceful handover. This is an underground struggle, opaque, violent in its ideological foundations, that will determine the future of the Middle East, Iran's nuclear program, and the global balance of power between the West and the so-called axis of resistance. And at the center of that struggle stands this man, Arafi, whom few know, but everyone should be watching. Who is he really? Not a military man, not a technocrat. Arafi is a pure ideologue. He spent the bulk of his career training, indoctrinating, and exporting. As director of Iran's seminaries, he presided over Al-Mustafa University, an institution that is not simply a religious school. It is a machine built to produce ideological agents, recruiters for the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, the armed and tentacular extension of the Islamic Republic across the world. That university was sanctioned by the United States government as part of its counterterrorism efforts. That is not a footnote. That is the deep nature of what Arafi represents. Jason Brodsky, policy director at United Against Nuclear Iran, is direct. Arafi has been steeped in Khomeinist ideology throughout his entire career. And Khomeinism, let's be clear, is not simply a religious doctrine. It is an offensive geopolitical doctrine, built around a fundamental principle declared in 1979 by Ayatollah Khomeini himself. Death to America. That slogan is not a metaphor. It is not crowd rhetoric. It is a program. And Arafi is one of its most faithful servants. His own statements leave absolutely no room for doubt. In a Friday sermon in 2019, he declared, "We will remain faithful until the end, until the arrogant are defeated and Israel disappears." He also stated that America would carry to its grave its wish to see Iran abandon weapons production. These are his words, spoken publicly, owned without apology. For Arafi, confrontation with the West is not a historical accident, it is a divine mission. But to understand why his appointment to the Interim Council is so significant, you need to understand the context in which it occurs. Iran just lost Khamenei, not to natural causes, but to a military strike. The country is in shock. Its power structures are fractured. Iran's own foreign minister admitted that the Revolutionary Guards are now acting on their own initiative, without clear centralized coordination. What that means in practice is that there is no longer a unified government capable of exercising real control over the entire Iranian state apparatus. In this institutional chaos, the Interim Leadership Council is supposed to ensure the continuity of the regime. 3 members, 3 men to hold together a system that threatens to either disintegrate entirely or worse, radicalize further into unpredictable and uncontrolled violence. And one of those 3 men is Arafi. Mardo Sogom, a veteran journalist and Iran specialist, offers a particularly sharp reading of the situation. Arafi is a compromise candidate. The Revolutionary Guards can control him. He does not represent a threat to either of the 2 internal factions currently jockeying for dominance. In other words, his appointment is not necessarily proof that he is the regime's strongman. It may be proof that he is the man no one wanted to eliminate. The one who serves as a provisional arbiter while the real power players position themselves in the shadows. But make no mistake, being a compromise candidate in the Iranian system does not mean being a moderate. In a system where fanaticism is the norm, compromise is negotiated between different shades of extremism. Arafi threatened death to protesters who dared remove clerics' turbans in the streets. His exact words, "Those who attack the turbans of the clergy must know that the turban will become their shroud." That is the voice of a man who considers internal dissent a capital offense. What makes Arafi's trajectory particularly alarming is the combination of his roles. He served on the Guardian Council, the body that approves or disqualifies candidates for elections, effectively censoring any real opposition. He served as vice president of the Assembly of Experts, the assembly responsible for designating the supreme leader. He directed the seminary of Qom, the nerve center of Iranian Shia clergy, and he presided over Al-Mustafa University, that ideological laboratory sanctioned by Washington. U.S. Representative Brian Mast, chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, puts it plainly: Arafi has climbed every rung of the ladder. He has the religious, educational, and governmental experience to succeed Khamenei. That complete profile, that decades-long accumulation of institutional power, is precisely what makes him a formidable player, even if his path to succession has real weaknesses, because it does. Ben Sabti, Iran expert at the Institute for National Security Studies in Israel, raises a fundamental point. Arafi is not a Sayyid, meaning he does not descend directly from the Prophet Muhammad. In Shia tradition, that title carries extraordinary spiritual and symbolic legitimacy. Khamenei had it. Arafi does not. Furthermore, he has never held a position within the regime's military security apparatus, nor has he ever led an operational branch of the Islamic State. In a country where the Revolutionary Guards have become an autonomous power operating outside civilian control, not having strong ties to the military is a serious handicap. And yet Brodsky offers a counterweight. His participation in the Interim Council will expose him, for the first time, to foreign policy and security files at a level he has never previously reached. This is an accelerated crash course in real power, and if the regime survives the weeks ahead, which is far from guaranteed, Arafi will emerge from this interim period with an entirely new political stature, the stature of a man who held the wheel during the storm. The question now, the one obsessing Washington, Tel Aviv, and every Western capital, is this: which way will Iran break? Toward relative stabilization under a new supreme leader, however ideologically rigid, or toward internal fragmentation that could cause the regime to implode, but would also render the nuclear program uncontrollable, the pro-Iranian militias across the Middle East autonomous and unpredictable, and the entire region more dangerous than it has ever been? Mariam Memarsadeghi, a senior researcher and Iran specialist, frames the problem with brutal clarity. The regime, or whatever remains of it, is no different from a terrorist group. Any leader chosen by this system will carry the inheritance of this system, and that inheritance is 46 years of domestic repression, exported revolutionary violence, international terrorism sponsorship, and a relentless drive toward the nuclear bomb. Arafi may not yet be supreme leader, but he is, today, one of the key pieces in the most opaque and most dangerous succession game in global geopolitics. A man forged in Khomeinist ideology, devoted to destroying American and Israeli influence, who has never once been held accountable to anyone other than a system designed to outlast its own individuals. Remember this name, Arafi, because what is happening in Tehran right now will not stay in Tehran.